some people, it is all about research, research, research. At least, that's the way it should have been for this next gentleman. After all, if he did a little bit more research, he would never have to deal with the horrors he was about to encounter. Stay tuned and find out all about them in this episode titled The Sourlands. A few years back, my boyfriend Daryl made a really stupid decision. He ignored all the signs, and he still rented that creepy little place in the middle of nowhere. I guess he was pretty eager to move out of his parents' place. And I suppose that little house in the Sourlands was only $275 a month. But still, he and his roommate could have done at least a little research. It didn't take long for weird things to start happening. Let's just say he signed the lease on Thursday, moved in Friday, and then on Saturday came home crying to Mommy and Daddy because he was hearing weird banging coming from the walls and floors. On Sunday, his dad wanted to take a look at the place. But by the time they got there, it was completely turned upside down. It looked as if it had been robbed. But when they looked to see what was missing, the only thing that was gone was a frog in a jar of formaldehyde. Don't ask me why Daryl has that thing. It's super creepy. An icebreaker, I suppose. But the really weird part? The frog was gone, but the jar of formaldehyde wasn't. The first time I ever saw his little rental was when me and my friend Debbie came over for a visit. The first thing that Debbie told me was, "Sue, this place has really bad karma." I totally agreed with her, so I told Daryl he needed to move out immediately. Of course he didn't listen to me. But the next 4 months were nothing but a string of bad luck. First, his car died. Then his replacement car died. Both he and his roommate lost their jobs, and they always seemed to be sick. And then to put on top of that, the weird noises kept going, and the appliances went berserk. Finally, after about 8 weeks, they found something really disturbing. They were taking a pot out from under the sink to make supper, and what did they find in the pot? The frog, with a pencil shoved into its mouth and coming out of its butt. Gross. Of course, Daryl wanted to move out after that, but his roommate wouldn't let him because of the cheap rent. Ironically, his roommate seemed to be missing after that. And then there was that time I was staying over for the weekend. Me and Daryl were watching TV, and we had the door open because it was hot out. But it was totally in vain because there was absolutely no breeze. And then out of nowhere, the door just slammed so hard it shook the walls. I totally freaked out, and I demanded that we leave. Daryl's last encounter was when he was about to make supper. He was anticipating his roommate to come home, so he put some water on the stove and started boiling it. He just turned around to get some rice, but by the time he turned back, the pot was gone and the stove was still on. He stood there listening, waiting for something to happen. But he knew he couldn't stay there forever, so he turned around, and the pot of water was sitting in the middle of the kitchen floor. No water was even spilled. It was as if it was picked up and gently placed in the middle of the floor. Enough was enough. So he picked up the pot, put it in the sink, and turned off the stove and sped out of there. He immediately called his roommate, telling him he was moving out. Now Daryl knows to do a little bit more research before moving into a new house.